Alright, well, the Eagles ventured to Foxsborough for a joint practice and things got a little scrappy, as the Philly O-line kind of struggled. However, Jalen remained as consistent as ever, and still hasn't had a turnover. Meanwhile, the defense absolutely dominated, in particular the D-line, but a few areas struggled. Also, on another topic, this whole Haason Reddick situation is wild. And with that being said, Bryce Huff is finally proving worth the risk, so let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Hey, do me a favor, hit that like button, and then also, I don't know how, but the channel just passed 70,000 subscribers. So first off, thank you. And then also, we're less than 5,000 subscribers away from giving away this Isaiah Rodgers helmet to one lucky subscriber. However, while one of you may enjoy some of that luck, the New York Jets haven't been as fortunate, after Jordan Schultz reported on Monday that Haason Reddick's camp informed the Jets that he wants to be traded, which is absolutely wild to see how this thing's playing out. I mean, remember, the Jets literally traded a 2026 third-round pick with the potential to turn into a second less than 5 months ago. And well, here they are now with a guy who wants to be traded. But I understand Haas's thoughts. I mean, the dude's been one of the most productive at pass rushing the entire league. Plus, let's be honest, the Jets don't have much leverage seeing that they put all their cards on the table in win-now mode with Aaron Rodgers and some of the other moves. Although I say that, but for the record, Reddick has racked up well over $1 million in fines by holding out. So yeah, either way, it's blatantly obvious that this is not a good relationship. Which, to that point, only made matters worse when Jets general manager Joe Douglas responded about an hour after the trade request petition from Haas in an official statement saying, "We've informed Haason that we will not trade him, that he's expected to be here with his teammates, and that he will continue to be fined per the CBA if he does not report." And continuing with, "Since trade discussions back in March have been clear, direct, and consistent with our position, our focus will remain on the guys we have here as we prepare for the regular season."
How did things ever get so far? I don't know.
I'm kind of asking myself the same question, because in what world would Joe Douglas willingly trade for a player if a contract wasn't in place? Okay, sure, I realize it wouldn't be the first mistake by a GM, just like it wouldn't be the first time Howie Roseman's pressured another GM into a deal.
It's gotta be now.
Well,
Seal the deal. 3, 2, now. Say it. Do it now. Do it now.
Obviously, Howie doesn't win every deal, but when it comes to the Jets, he's batting at a historic level. Heck, think about this. Not only does this Reddick situation look great in hindsight for Philly, but thanks to New York's moving on from Mekhi Becton, the Eagles appear to have found their starting right guard for cheap. And that's not to mention getting a younger, higher upside pass rusher in terms of years at least, for significantly less than what you would have had to pay Haas. However, I hear you, there might be some concerns about Bryce Huff, yet he did have a very productive practice against New England, which we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, I don't think there's any denying that Howie's running circles around Joe Douglas. Yet even so, it's no surprise, like Diana Rossini confirmed, that there were clearly trust and communication issues that led to this situation, saying the Jets did know Reddick wanted a new contract before trading for him, and actually made him an offer before the trade, albeit an offensive, below-market one that was turned down.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Well, he did refuse it, yet unbelievably, New York still moved forward with the trade, telling Rossini they were informed by Reddick's rep that he would play under his current contract. Of course, look, hindsight's 20/20, but still, I can't believe in that situation that you would actually believe that comment. And naturally, Reddick has a different story, saying they were under the impression the Jets would do a deal before camp, although that obviously didn't happen. And then just a few weeks ago, the Jets called to tell Haas they'd be willing to rework the current deal if he showed up. But by that point, he was probably somewhere in Tokyo, and understandably so, all the trust had been limited or even gone. Also, let me just say this, I'm a big fan of Haason Reddick, and I hope he does really well. Selfishly, obviously, yes, for our pick, but for him too. However, there's a 0.0001% chance that he comes back to Philly. Although, another move that continues to be thrown out there is the potential of Patriots outside linebacker Matt Judon, who's been dealing with a bit of trust issues himself, like when it was reported that the Patriots made him a new deal. Except then he came back to say no they haven't and to not believe the lies. And then fast forward to this week when Jeremy Fowler revealed that multiple teams have been making calls to New England to see about the potential trade for Judon. Of course, to be expected, there's rumors and speculation that Howie's making calls. And sure, why wouldn't he, except I'm not really positive that Howie's going to go ahead and make this move, especially if there's uncertainty around the contract situation. At the same time, I'd love to have that talent on the roster, it just doesn't seem very realistic to have Judon, but having said that, how are you guys feeling about that situation? I don't know, maybe Howie changes his mind after getting to see him up close, as the Birds took the quick flight up to Foxsborough for a joint practice with the Pats. And I'll be honest, one of the best sights from camp was seeing Cooper DeJean wearing pads, as he's obviously been progressing toward getting in some work with stretches and warm-ups, but finally got in limited work with the pads on, which like I say, is no doubt promising, especially since the Rook thinks he'll be playing fairly soon.
I mean, I've been trying to learn all three. You know, the slack corners where I've been playing most, so I've been kind of locked in on that. You know, while trying to learn the safety spot as well.
Honestly, the fact that we have so much competition out there already and still haven't even seen Coop is awesome. But like I said, he's getting closer, and so is Paris Campbell, who was a limited participant. with the remaining list being Oren Burks, whose knee injury continues to sideline him, Grant Calcaterra with a shoulder, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson with a shoulder, plus Albert O and the abdomen injury, as well as newly acquired safety Caden Stern, who's still rehabbing the torn patella tendon in the knee. Oh yeah, you also had Mekhi Garner and Brandon Smith still limited in addition to Paris and Coop. But for the guys that were active, or at least certainly the starters, we got to see the most competition all camp, as both Nick Sirianni and Gerard Mayo agreed that practice would be treated like a game. However, even with the intensity turned up, Mayo said if the starters got in a fight, then they'd have to play the entire preseason game on Thursday. And if the backups got in a fight, then they wouldn't play at all, which the message was just about the same on the Philly side.
No fights, right? That's what you're coming out here to. You're coming out here to work. And you're coming out here to get good reps. You're not allowed to fight. There's no fights in games, right? You never see big brawls in games, but some reason you see them at practices. And so our job is to come out here and handle ourselves just like a game. Just like if we want our tackling to be sure in a game, our approach out here has to be good. Same thing with our composure. If you want your composure to be good in game, your approach has to be the same out here.
That's great, but the beauty to all of this is that actually before the players got a chance to show their composure, right after interviewing, a Patriots fan yelled at Sirianni that Bill Belichick is going to take his job next year.
Why don't you shut the hell up? I'd love to punch that guy in the face right now, but I can't, because I'd get in trouble.
Thankfully, Sirianni took a page out of Jalen's book and blocked out the noise. Anyway, the Eagles went through warm-ups as it definitely felt game-like based on what players said afterward, with all the guys going through the drills and pregame handshakes and secret handshakes, except for Kenny Pickett, who was kind of left hanging. But come on, they probably just couldn't see his hand. Okay, sorry, that was probably a low blow. However, after that, both teams started one-on-one drills, where A.J. Brown showed Christian Gonzalez why he's literally always open on a slant route. And then later, Jalen put a dime right on the money to Dallas Goedert to beat his defender for the score. Naturally, I can't mention one-on-one drills without saying Devontae Smith. Smitty also took advantage of his premier route running skills to get just enough separation to make the grab. Oh yeah, and then later, while matched up with Christian Gonzalez, the Slim Reaper made sure to remind him that he's the smoothest route runner in the league. Now, on the flip side, the Eagles' DBs did pretty good too, with Quinyon Mitchell especially standing out in those drills. Although, to be fair, Drake May was able to hit a couple different receivers on routes during one-on-one, so it's not like they couldn't get anything going. FYI, that was Sean Stevens getting beat there by the cornerback on that rep. Plus, even James Bradbury saw a bit of action at corner. And I don't know, surprisingly, unsurprisingly, it didn't necessarily go well, as JB was flagged for a hold while giving up a touchdown to backup tight end Mitchell Wilcox. I mean, obviously, Fangio said that JB would get some reps at corner, but I think it's pretty obvious right now that he's not a viable solution. I mean, again, Mitchell Wilcox, would you have known that name before? Granted, he did make a play later in team drills as he was playing safety, with Brandon Lee Gowton recognizing him for his heady play. With that being said, though, the O-line and D-line drills were just about a runaway. Since you know it's bad when you've got New England reporters admitting the Eagles' defensive front won easily against the Patriots' O-line in 1v1 and 2v2 drills. In particular, the 2v2, where some of the two-man stunt work was rough. And okay, yeah, the Patriots' O-line is nothing to write home about, but you still have to like the fact that you're hearing more about the Eagles' pass rush. In fact, Jimmy Kempski took the opportunity to ask some of the New England beat reporters if they've had struggles, as they admitted O-line play has certainly allowed some pressures, but that they hadn't seen anything close to this kind of dominance all camp. Which, case in point, they knew it'd be a long day when Brandon Graham started out 11-on-11s with a sack. Of course, the most notable change in the lineup was hearing Brandon Lee Gowton point out that Devin White and Nakobe Dean were the starting linebackers and not Zack Baun. Meanwhile, the usual starters of Slay and Zay on the outside and Q in the slot kept up, as well as Mekhi Becton, who is your starting right guard. Yet getting back to the linebacker situation, I think we've all been a little bit concerned. But to see Baun quickly taken out of the first-team lineup for Nakobe after the poor play against Baltimore no doubt suggests Fangio is still open to any guy next to Devin White. Heck, the DC even had Brandon Smith and Ben Van Sumeren out there seeing some first-team reps at one point. I know, that's not happening, and sometimes it's just for looks, but still, that can't make you feel great. Although even with Nakobe getting those first looks at starting, it didn't begin well, as Brandon Lee Gowton pointed out that Nakobe continued to struggle in coverage. However, on the other hand, Dean does continue to be really strong against the run, with multiple Patriots beat writers admitting the run game struggled early on, leading to both Jacoby Brissett and Drake May to settle for short to intermediate throws against the linebackers. And yes, I'm with those of you who hear that and go, didn't we just live through that last year? Yet in an effort to be fair, New England forced Jalen Hurts to do much of the same, with reports of multiple sacks for the Patriots on Jalen, and particularly generating a lot of interior pressure on Jeff Stoutland's first unit. But as a positive, Bleeding Green Nation also pointed out that Jalen seems to be staying in the pocket more, going through his reads and then decisively checking down instead of holding onto the ball too long or drifting out of the pocket, which naturally led to Jalen going 10 for 11 early on against the Patriots. Also, I saw from several other reports that Kellen Moore was in his bag at practice, showing a lot more pre-snap motion and trickery than what we witnessed during the last preseason game. I mean, who doesn't love that? Plus, even though that dink and dunk can get boring, it eventually lulls the defense to sleep, which is kind of what happened to New England, as Jalen eventually found Smitty for a 35-yard gain on a deep ball. with most of the throws, shocking I know, going to either Devontae or AJ. However, as great of a throw as that was, the best pass of potentially all camp was Hurts to Saquon, after QB1 noticed Saquon matched up against Matt Judon on a wheel route, and then proceeded to drop it right in the breadbasket for the score. Like, come on, those are obviously the throws you want to see, and just one of the many ways Saquon is going to create mismatches this season. Moving on though, QB2 or 3, depending on how you view him, also had a solid day, as Kenny Pickett found John Ross on a couple throws, with Jimmy Kempski saying he kept finding a way to get open. And then later, Pickett connected with tight end EJ Jenkins for a 30-yard score, which is definitely notable considering the lack of depth at the tight end 3 spot. Now that's great, but at that point, Vic Fangio's defense turned it up a notch, as the Patriots were working on some red zone offense, and Nakobe Dean, yes, I said Nakobe Dean, helped break up a pass in the end zone that Austin Hooper had his hands on. But Nakobe jarred the ball loose, and then Zack Baun was the one who ultimately came away with the interception. Of course, the D wasn't done, as Jordan Davis made his presence felt, generating a pressure on Brissett to force him out of the pocket. And Keely Ringo broke up a pass that would have resulted in a touchdown in the end zone, leaving CJ Gardner-Johnson to come over and celebrate after the play. Honestly, yeah, just seeing or hearing about a linebacker making a play in the receiving game is kind of a breath of fresh air. Yet the best part was that the defense was just getting started, as on the next set of plays, Jacoby Brissett threw his second pick of the day, this time to Jeremiah Trotter Jr., with the Rook stepping in front of the intended target right across the middle at the very last second to make the play. Again, just another reason I'll say this dude will play significant snaps by the middle of the season, if not before. Of course, that pass coverage was solid in several areas, as Dave Zangaro shared of a Darius Slay pass breakup in the flat. And then shout out to Brandon Lee Gowton for mentioning that Isaiah Rodgers wasn't very noticeable, but that's kind of a good thing sometimes for a corner, as opposed to Keely Ringo, who appears to be slightly behind Rodgers and was up and down, nearly making an interception in the end zone, but then also later allowing Jalen Reagor to catch a deep pass when he misjudged the ball. Although I can't blame Keely, because guarding Reagor in training camp is kind of like guarding an all-pro receiver. Yet on the topic of all-pros, Bryce Huff was brought in to replace an all-pro in Haason Reddick, and I'm with you that he's been fairly quiet up to this point. However, let's remember that he's going up against Pave the Lane and Jordan Mailata. But with Fangio sharing a few weeks ago that he's not up to where he needs to be in his coverage ability, it's understandable there was some concern, except that appears to be starting to change, as Bryce Huff was one of the biggest forces on the defense at joint practice, with Andrew DeCecco specifically focusing on the defense, saying Huff was a standout, registering a sack and making several physical plays against the run. But DeCecco wasn't the only one, with Zach Berman and Bo Wolf also singling out Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith as guys who led an impressive pass rush on Tuesday. Oh yeah, and the whole concern about the dropping into coverage thing? Well, Jalix Hunt said Huff's been really good at how he's picking it up, so much so that the Rook is going to him to ask for some tips and pointers. Of course, I'm not saying that's an automatic for Agent Zero and that he's golden and we don't have anything to worry about. However, the fact that he went up against a different unit and was wreaking havoc is certainly a promising sign. At the same time, I suppose you could argue that was everyone, with Jimmy Kempski counting at least 11, if not up to 13 sacks for the squad. Moro Ajomo, Nakobe Dean, Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Brandon Graham, Zack Baun, and Ben Van Sumeren, which is phenomenal that they all got sacks and couldn't have been fun for the Patriots offense. Although the final series was probably the worst part, as the Eagles ended up registering 5 sacks on the final 6 plays of practice. Surprisingly, that didn't actually start a fight, but come on, hearing that, what does that make you feel about the production? Oh yeah, mentioning a fight, we did get a scuffle during a special teams rep when former Eagle Christian Ellis blocked Kenny Gainwell into Isaiah Rodgers on a kickoff play, causing Zay to fumble and New England to return it for a score, where a play after that, tippers flared and there was a scrum that had to be separated. But, it's just part of the game, so no biggie. Honestly, my biggest excitement is 2 things. 1, the defense showed up and dominated, and 2, Jalen Hurts again proved to be decisive and pick apart a different defense than Fangio's. Now sure, obviously the Patriots aren't an upper echelon team, but the fact that Jalen Hurts went in there and picked apart the defense, and again has not thrown any turnovers in 12 practices, is at least something to be a little optimistic about. But having said that, next up is a closed walkthrough for the Eagles before playing the Pats on Thursday, tomorrow, which again we'll be live streaming for, so feel free to swing on by. Also, do me a favor and hit that like button, make sure to subscribe if you're not already, because again, we're going to give away that helmet over there as soon as we get to 75,000 subscribers, and let me know your biggest takeaway from Tuesday's practice. Until next time, this has been the Philly Special.